believe there's gonna be money.
Recording in progress. Good
Oh,
deal.
we're already
All
going.
right, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here for our first budget workshop of this year. There will be others. Workshop, as you know, is interactive, not a formal city council meeting. Those that are here in attendance already know how the workshops work. So with that, let's begin. City manager.
So I do have a structure and a strategy in place, and it will be kind of a go through each council member and then open it to the public. So as I mentioned, one of my goals is changing the process of how we do the budget. I've been privileged to be able to go to different trainings and speak to other city managers. And I want to redo everything we kind of do with the budget so that you start off with a set of numbers, not a set of questions. But this year it's the transition because of the timing of everything that happened. So we're going to start off with the 3 workshops back to back, real informative, just to kind of get your ideas and thoughts, then to build a draft, and then to go into actual number discussions. The whole purpose of the budget really is a guide for the city. There's 2 different types of budgets, and I think that's where we kind of get off, is there's the operating, which is a year-to-year budget. So it's things we can do within a year. And then there's what we do as far as a capital improvement budget. We do submit a capital improvement plan. It's kind of the departments in the city's wish list, but we've never put real teeth to it. And so I'm trying to change how we do that. Instead of having that wish list, creating the budget parallel to each other so that not only the public can see, hey, you know, we raised fees for this project. Now we can see that they're in this line item and this is the project and this is how it's being completed. So everything kind of is a puzzle that works together. A lot of my research and visiting with other cities is it is kind of hard to get that capital improvement budget and list going. Especially if your operating is just hands over year, you know, increasing and trying to change. So for the next couple of days, what we're going to focus on is really the top priorities that have been outlined by the public. I don't want the public to think that we've just asked for your information and then put it on a shelf. We have not done that. We've taken your information, especially with the top 2 priorities, and we've actually started putting that towards different plans, studies, engineering. But these are all big projects that will come from it. As far as the operating side of it, you know, it's making sure we have what we need for our employees to be able to do the day-to-day basis. So the 2 big priorities are infrastructure and employees. So what I've done is I've broken down where we're at with the infrastructure, and then I would like each one of you to give me your top 3. Move forward with those. We need to add, we need to change, what about? Things that you can see that we need to improve and like I said, to add. So currently we're going to focus on the water. And so I'll go through each one of you guys and then we'll open it up for the public so that I can get your input as well. When we started this initiative at the end of last fiscal year, beginning of this fiscal year, we got the results from the residents and the council agreed that the 2 main priorities were infrastructure and employees. At the top of the list was water. So that the public understands, currently we've been addressing the issues that have come up with the water. The first issue that was discussed was the new housing development being added to the southeast side of Alpine. And I have brought this up in the weekly updates to council as well. The city did go out for a feasibility study to understand if we would be able to provide pressure. During the annexation process, it was brought to the council's attention that I did not think we would be able to. The feasibility study has confirmed that the water pressure will be an issue. So the next step, as far as this feasibility study is concerned, is to decide on which option we want to take. Our engineers, Jacob and Martin, did make a presentation regarding the ability to move or to add a connecting line from the Sol Ross tanks, which are city property that do belong to the city, to feed additional water to that side of town, or to try to connect Lower and Upper Hill. One regulates the south side, one regulates the lower hill, to open up a valve or add some type of a valve there. I don't know the technical terms, I'm sorry, guys. And that could increase some of that water flow to that side of town as well. Both of those are obviously good suggestions. They are engineered. The funding is where the question comes into play. How would the city fund this type of project? So to move forward with this, we would really want to look at having the engineers come in and do an RFP to get bids to truly understand what would come back. What we've learned is we have 900,000 in reserves that we could use for this project. But in reality, when we have someone bid for projects, it comes out double that amount. We're noticing that when we did some of our wastewater treatment plant stuff. That's one project we started. The second project that we've started with our engineers addressing our water concerns and infrastructure is the Sunny Glen well field. For the past several years, we've had issues with the water on the west side of Alpine, and we don't quite understand what is going on with that well field and the storage tanks. So we've already initiated work with our engineers to address the wells. That includes the number of wells, the capacity for each well, and see what we need to do. I also brought to the council's attention that we could add additional wells to it by leasing from private owners. That is still on the table, but that will require engineering and TCEQ approval. So we haven't moved forward with that after the last kind of proposed lease. But additional thoughts have been brought to the city in regards to that as well, that I'm moving forward with our engineers to see if we can't reduce the amount of piping, utilize what we have, reduce the piping that we're required to maintain. For those of you who don't know, some of our piping goes out, we have easements, it goes out into the open areas of Sunny Glen. No one knows when there's a water leak out there until we have an emergency, because you can't see it. We don't go onto private property unless we suspect something going on. That's what happened a couple weekends ago. There had been a leak out there. We actually had a rancher hopping fence lines on our behalf until he could find it.
And a drone.
Yes, we did get our police department drone out there. It was a little green patch in the middle of a field that there was no road access to. We also learned that the ETP gas line is right below that water line. So we had to do it by hand. If we can reduce some of the piping that is in areas that's not so noticeable, that will help, because then when there's a water leak, everyone will see it. So that's one thing we're working towards. We're also initiating the storage tanks and understanding the functionality of each one and why we're having issues with the one up on Pierce tank up on the hill. That would have provided redundancy to our storage if it was working. So we're working back with them. We're also looking at our capacity to understand what the city of Alpine truly utilizes and the capacity we can provide. The Skinner Well Service has been a wonderful asset to the city. They work with us in the middle of the night. They call us, we call them. They've provided some feedback on what our current pumping capacities are, if we can dig deeper, if we cannot dig deeper. They've provided a lot of information, so I'm very happy now it's connecting them with our engineers. The other item that we've discussed and are working towards is our pressure plane connections. That's tying what we call the two sides. Sunny Glen services one side of Alpine, and what we call Mooski services the other side. So when we have issues, people think, well, you know, why can't you just push water from one to the other? We have no connection to do that. We have what we call the $1 million booster pump. It did not cost that much, but might as well have. That was installed to try to solve that problem multiple years ago, I believe the early 2000s. It did more damage than good when they tried to operate it.
This is the one on the south side.
Yes, this is the one that's just sitting right over here.
With cobwebs.
Yes. It's still a good piece of equipment because it's never been used. But trying to rehab that and either relocate it or understand the true engineering design and what failed. So that's one thing we've talked about. The other item that we've talked about with the water is our lead and copper requirements. We are required by federal and state law to provide the lead and copper inventory, and then they will soon ask us to start replacing. So we want to be ahead of that. We've already We've already applied for the Texas Water Development Board funding that will help with this project. The initial proposed budget was $6 million. After collecting what data we had and speaking to our staff, the engineers are comfortable with submitting for 1.3 million. It's a huge difference in what we applied for, but they applied with 0 knowns. And so of course you go for the highest you can get. The other thing that has come up that is really important that council needs to understand when we look at water infrastructure is our conservation plan. So we are required as part of this application to provide a conservation plan that is less than 5 years old. Ours was last updated in 2000. It's a little bit old, which means the data and the capacity in which outlines in that plan of what we produce is also incorrect. So our engineers, as part of the application to the Water Development Board, has provided a draft. So it's in progress. Council will ultimately have to approve it. But I do think that we need to look at our long-term, we're in the desert. We need to look at our long-term sustainability with our water, and that will require us to update our conservation plan. And I do feel we need to be stricter at the lower level and not wait till we're in an emergency to have to ask people to conserve. I think we need to just start conserving now instead of waiting till that emergency. So that will be on the table as this part of this next fiscal year, the current and moving forward, to get that updated. So when we look at water infrastructure, everyone has said we need to improve it, we need to improve it, we need to improve it. What myself and the team has worked together on is moving to address our current problems. We know we need to address the east side. We know we need to connect the cities. We know we need to address the Sunny Glen. We know we have to address lead and copper. We know we have to update our conservation plan. But I know that there's probably 1,000 more things that each one of you would like us to do in our water system, as well as what the public would like us to do. I also have spoken with the utilities interim manager and asked him, what are your department priorities? When I speak to the departments, I want the council to understand that they're focused a lot on operational, and then they have a few long-term that they know if they could get started, that would be great, but they're really focused on the needs for today. So I'd like to start off with Councilmember Stone, and if you just have any thoughts that you would like to see with the water specifically, things that you would like to see us work towards, change, include.
I appreciate that, and thank you for the great synopsis there. I wrote down all of your bullet points here. I think they sound exactly where we need to be focusing. You know, it's hard. I speak with Catherine about this, that we have infrastructure that was put in the 1940s. I mean, there's like rumors that it's even like wooden and stuff like that. It's nuts. Maybe that's true. I don't know. But with that, that's difficult. And you know, I'm sure the utility director in that department is always looking at ways to just keep the system going. And so this is a great opportunity that you're bringing up to be able to look at new ways to be able to increase capacity, look at our use versus what we can provide. That's definitely something that I think we can look at. I really enjoy hearing that we are complying and we're further trying to really seek this lead and copper grant. I think that's really important as well. You know, we know there's science behind lead and copper, that it affects brain development in children. And so that's a huge need in the community. And also I know Rick wants good, you know, water pressure, just like we get down in the valley as well. And so to make sure that we're treating everybody the same. I think as well as the south side, we're missing our representative there today, our counselor. But you know, they talk about a lot of problems there as well. And so I want to make sure that we're focusing and putting resources all across the city. But that's where I just like to start, and appreciate the synopsis again, Megan.
Councilor Olivas?
Yes, I just have 2 questions. I know that water is, I agree on everything that you said, that water is very important. And we need water for everything. And one of the things is our parks, that they use a lot of water too. And they need investment also. I have several complaints of the Medina Park that it has been watered in more than a year, and trees are dying, and they're cutting the trees, and I walk, and yeah, the grass is totally dry, and not just this season. I don't know if that has been taken care or really affect with the water for the drinking people. That's one of my concerns. And the other one is the tank that you just mentioned it. So when the pump is not working, a lot of water, it just goes away and wasting. So if we can keep that water, it help with the pressure to the rest of the community.
Sorry, I'm trying the whole new, trying to be digital like Geo over here.
That's okay.
Counselor Nance?
Outside of the 5 things you mentioned there, the 2 that are most interesting to me is water issues. Public's talked about water issues, and the other thing that I've heard them speak about is billing errors. So I think billing errors would be something that if that could get on the timeline would be important, whether software or whatever, or so the end user can actually see when they have a leak. That measures better than, the older technology water meters that we have, and saying that than AMR, the automated meter readers, or anything like that. And then I had questions on the 5 big things, but are we going to discuss those, or are those kind of set in stone?
Nope, we can discuss them.
The one I had then is the $1 million pump you just said that's sitting out there with cobwebs. Can that be sold?
It might be able to, we could auction it off. We're hoping to be able to repurpose it within our own system.
The lead copper grant, is that one time now or never? Or do you think it would be willing to be offered in future years?
It's really unknown. So all of the big infrastructure money that came down for the federal government, we don't qualify to apply directly for it. A chunk went to the state of Texas. The state of Texas then divided it amongst their big boards, TxDOT, Texas Water Development Board. And then from there, those agencies have decided how they're gonna hand it down to the smaller people. So as part of the project, they offered it as a 51% grant, 49% loan. So 51% of that money will be forgiven and the rest will become a loan to the city. We're applying for it for this go round to finalize the inventory, because we have to have a complete inventory. We're allowed to present a certain amount of unknowns, but at the end of the day, we still have to know exactly everything in the ground. So that will contribute to that, as well as some of the replacement of what we think is lead copper.
And then when you mentioned this as a 1.3, then that's 650,000 that would be forgiven, 650,000 on a 0% interest loan?
Yes.
Okay.
So we don't know if they're gonna keep giving buckets of money. Now, the Water Development Board does have the ability to borrow from them. They're all very low interest rate loans. And then they do have like the state drinking water revolving fund. They have the clean drinking revolving fund. They have different ones that we can apply through to get additional funding. I do think the city needs to go out for funding, and we need to go through the Water Development Board. It is I call it the safest, cheapest way to borrow money. But we also need to make sure when we borrow money, and this is what's gotten the city in trouble in the past, is if we tell the public we're gonna fix A, B, and C, then we're gonna fix A, B, and C. It's not gonna be, we're gonna fix A and then, oh, well, we needed the rest for another project, but that's not how this works, at least with me. Prior, that was the issue. They applied for funding, 18 projects, they completed 3 of them, and the rest went into operating. So that's not how to borrow money and present it to the public. I do think when you look at all the projects, we look at the ones that are priority and go for that type of.
Okay. That was all my question.
And Ms. Escobedo is absent today. Mr. Stevens.
So not being without opinion. One, if I look at the priorities, I think we needed the water pressure taken care of on the southeast side. We were supposed to provide 35 PSI for every water meter in the city. We don't do it down there. The council made a decision to move forward with the annexation, so we gotta get that one. I think number two is, making sure we understand what our water capacity capabilities are for the city. And then get our wells lined up accordingly. And then I think the east-west connection is the next one. I've heard lots of stories, and I think, and I'm glad you're talking with John Skinner. I think, Megan, it'd be worthwhile for council to get educated by John about what's out there. We talk about the $1 million pump out there. When I look at the design, and I have looked at the design, there's no surprise it blew out water lines because the design pumped it into the water system. It should have pumped it into the tank and let the tank gravity feed out. Water designs are not a big surprise. I've dealt with a lot of them. I have water systems in my house because I get 10 PSI delivered to my house, 35 PSI to the meter. I actually have to step it up. I step up my water to my house at 100 PSI, and then I downstep it to 60 PSI. So I got water up to the second story. It's just unfathomable to me that the guys just hooked it up and shot it right into the system and blew everything out. So I think we all got to get educated about what's out there before we can make a decision. I know you're off working on that, and I'm here to go that with John, but I think it'd be good to get council educated.
So for that, I'm trying to get a date set up. I want him to work back with our engineers as well,
Yeah,
because they'll be the ones that help us procure any type of changes we need to make.
Yep.
Once everyone is on the same page as far as with our current driller and then of course with our engineers, then it would be a presentation because it would be a study and the council could approve and would have some estimated costs.
Yeah, because you're talking, what I think I heard was roughly $900,000 is kind of sitting in the pot.
Yes.
Difficult to make an assessment about what to spend without a perspective about here's what the respective chunks are. So I'm fully supportive of the priorities we've talked about before. I just like a little bit more information so we get down to the here's how we're going to spend those dollars in a way that makes sense. And you're the most informed buyer because you're going to buy this stuff. It'll be helpful to get us up to speed so we're all in sync, because we all hear lots of stories and rumors and everything else. And the more we're informed, the better council people we're going to be to support the plan.
So the idea for this budget is really to look at the engineering costs and then the priorities to either take this next year to build a really good debt package to address 2 or 3 at one time. The reserves really should not be used. They're one time. You use it once and you're kind of done.
Yeah.
Until we truly build in our financial plan. I don't want to miss out on opportunities to make improvements. There is that big bite of that infrastructure money from the federal government. We just need to make sure when we apply, we're not saying, oh yeah, we kind of want to do this, but we don't know what it's going to cost. And we want to go with exact details. This is what we want. This is how we're going to do it.
Yep.
So I do appreciate everyone's feedback. Mayor Eads.
Okay, good. You know, I have,
Opinions?
yes, I have no opinions, no. Being an educator, first and foremost, we do need to have the engineers and the experts here to educate. I agree with Councilmember Stevens, and that's what I wrote down. The engineers, the experts, Skinner, our own water department, everybody needs to be in this room. Not just educating council, but also the public. We're going to need to educate the public if we should decide that we need to go out for debt. This is something I think we need to seriously consider. It is past time for the repairs to be made. It has been kicked down the line for decades, too long. Our water department's busy every day putting out fires. Believe it or not, there's water leaks just about every day. They're not necessarily major, and they may not necessarily belong to the city. It may be on the individual side, but every day they're out looking at water leaks. They don't have the time or the capacity to really do the research and understanding. So first and foremost, we need that education. We need the engineers here to give us a plan so that we can move forward. We need the water department here. We need Skinner here. Any other experts that are in our community, we need them here. So we need some kind of workshop town hall where we can have the public here too to interact with what we need to do going forward. The Water Development Board, you and I spoke to the judge about getting a member on that board from the city. I think we need to continue to pursue that to see if we can get an individual from the city on that board, since they make such important decisions regarding this resource.
We talked with the county judge on the underground water
Okay.
development board. That's the local board for this area.
Yes, and we need an individual on that as well. And so the utility department, as I mentioned, is on an emergency day-to-day basis, and that we need to have the engineers and experts here. There are a number of things. Council did approve the annexation and addition of Skyway Gardens 2. They are starting building next month. We have to have the water. Council made a commitment and said that we would do this. We have to have the water. So as Councilmember Stevens said, that is going to have to be the utmost priority. We have to make sure that we're able to have the water, and we need those experts here to discuss this with us now. Conservation plan, yes, we do live in the desert. There's no denying that. And we are currently in a drought. There's no denying that either. Though councils, we're going through the budget, we need to think about water rates, and maybe there's a different rate in the summer for water. Maybe it increases to encourage conservation. There's many discussions to be had. Xeriscaping. City Hall should be xeriscaped. I know we're going to have to water the trees or we're going to lose them, but those should be soaker hoses and nothing spraying in the air. And that might be something else that we want to consider in our conservation plan, is encouraging nothing that's going up in the air, but there's ways to water trees with soaker hoses. Maybe there's some type of benefit we can give people for xeriscaping. And xeriscaping doesn't mean just bare rock. It means drought tolerant native plants. Okay. A lot of people think when you say xeriscape that, oh, it's just rock and that's it. No, not necessarily. I know we have a volunteer that you and I discussed, Megan, maybe he could work on xeriscape in City Hall. So we should be a leader in that front, leading by example on what needs to be done for water conservation. And I do get a lot of comments about parks and also the school district. And I know you and I have tried to reach out to AISD, and we have meetings with the AISD superintendent and the Sewell Ross president, although they weren't in our latest meeting, but we need to make sure that we are talking to them about what they're doing as far as watering. So we're all drawing from the same pool of water underground. We need to be concerned with that. Software, yes, I know that's not an immediate water issue as far as conserving water and fixing our water problems. And I know you are working on that, but that has to be a priority. I know you've been working on that over a year, and you've had Carmen working on testing different things, but we do need to get the software fixed so that we're not having these billing issues, not just for water, but also for gas, but make sure we're not having these billing issues. And the smart meters, as Councilmember Nance mentioned, would be important for freeing up some of our personnel from getting out of the truck, reading the meter, getting out of the truck, reading the meter. They can just drive by. That would free up some time for them to assist in other things such as water leaks and taps and stuff that they have to do. So yes, the water pressure on the southeast side, our infrastructure, we're going to have to get serious about repairing it. What Councilmember Stokes was referring to was a conversation that you and I, Councilmember Stone was referring to, was not, it was a conversation that you and I had about the latest water leak on 5th Street between Fort Davis and Marfa. It looks as though that pipe, that main, was from the 40s, and it's deteriorating. It's just degrading. It's old, and that's one that runs up to the Mooskies Well, which is several miles away. So probably that whole pipe needs to be replaced. Think about the cost of that, how much that's going to cost us. We're going to have more leaks from that pipe because it's deteriorating. Megan even had a piece of it in her truck. It's
actually on my desk.
Yes, it's coming apart. The city of Alpine, us residents, all of us, we all pay taxes. It's all of our money. We have got to bite the bullet and take care of the infrastructure. There's a lot of things that need to be replaced. A lot of the mains need to be replaced. And then, of course, we have the copper lead mandate that has come down from the federal government without adequate funding, of course, for us to do. And then they added to that we also had to know what was on the consumer side, not just what's on the city side.
And we're still unclear if we have to replace the consumers.
Yeah, so that's a possibility. Anyway, the point I'm making is we're gonna need to look at finance options, but first we need the education. We need those experts sitting here. It would have been great if we would have had a water department representative here today to speak with us. I know we've mentioned that during council meetings, we want departments who are on the agenda to be there, to send a representative so they can talk to council. That just expedites things and keeps us from having to table something and wait for another couple of weeks before we can get something moving. It slows things down. So we need that education, and the public, our residents need to know. We need to have some town hall workshop type meetings so that everybody's educated when the engineers and the experts, Skinner, whoever else may be out there, and our water department come to teach us. And we're not the experts on this.
One of the questions I have any tied into the mayor, why don't we have a DIP program for water?
I wouldn't be able to answer that. The DEM program is required by the Railroad Commission.
I understand that. They require it, therefore we do it.
Councilmember Stevens, can you explain for
So
everybody what?
the DIP is a regular replacement of all the lines that we have in the gas system that started in 2009. It was legislated by the Texas state that says you've got to replace the metal lines with plastic lines. So basically what I said, as opposed to the polypropylene. My question is, why don't we as a city initiate a DIMP program? It stands for Distribution Integrity Management Program for our water lines. And so over a 30-year period, we ended up replacing them, and we tie it to our streets repair and all that. I would think we'd want to go do that.
I think that sounds like an excellent idea. That way we're not, the city is not in that situation 10, 20, 30 years from now again.
Yeah.
So we go, we repair, we replace everything, and then they wait another 30, 40 years and they're in the same
You just replace
situation.
them regularly, so you don't replace them a certain amount. every
I don't know, is that something that council could do by ordinance or?
Not really by ordinance or anything. That's an internal process. But we can get, so what you would need to start to get this project is where to start. So the
Yeah.
engineers can help with kind of coming up with
The
a
plan?
long-term plan to look over the next 20, 30 years. This also ties back into the comprehensive plan for the city, which we've also discussed for that kind of thing. I do want to point out that if you do have questions that you want to ask and there's not a representative from the staff here, I have no problem asking them and then following up with council as a whole.
Right, I
I don't
understand that,
want
but
to
I'm just
obligate
thinking
them to
about,
be at meetings when I know their schedule and what's going on with. all these
Right.
issues.
but in the same vein, I mean, we're revisiting an ordinance tonight that technically we could have taken care of 2 weeks ago had somebody been here.
What ordinance?
About the animal euthanasia. Yeah, so
And
I
usually they
council,
are.
I know that we've discussed this, that we would really like to have the representatives there if at all possible.
I know we had removed that from chapter 23.
When we talk
And I-
about, I was just gonna say, when we talk about a DIP program, when I went to TML, they have a lot of that. But I think, the cities that are being proactive in their infrastructure replacement have GIS or any of that software where
Yeah.
they can mark it and say, this was replaced 4 years ago, and we want to do a follow-up 3 years from now. So I think we got to really get to that point as well, of like providing those tools and resources for,
And so we did implement GIS this year.
Yep.
So we do have a GIS software that they're having to build from the ground up with all of the information we've had from prior engineers and what they're putting together currently based on the letting.
and I'm wondering, does that one
Slowly.
actually have like a capital replacement program? Like if we lay a road and it's supposed to last 30 years, it has like not a workflow, but maybe like a help desk system or something that says 10 years from now, we want to come back and follow it up.
Yes, they have, well, they call them workflows and they also have layers. So right now, our gas department has a GIS system that they've had for multiple years. Ideally, the two could eventually be combined and you'd have a water layer and then you'd have the gas layer. So you could see how they overlap and where they are. And then we would add the street component. And then you could add sidewalks, and then, so you can build these layers, so when you are replacing and doing certain things, you can be like, okay, well, it's noted here that streets needs to upgrade this section of town, where are we at with the water?
So that's how Randy knows already in gas from the DEM. He says, I'm gonna focus on this area.
That, and he does a leak survey every year that a third party comes in and evaluates the system to find where the weak spots are that have to be replaced, and they're grading. So the higher the leak, the worse the grade, and that means an automatic replacement. And that all ties back into his DEMP, and he can use that as part of his part.
And in your opinion, the DEM's been very good as far as doing proactive maintenance and repair. So we have far fewer gas leaks than water leaks.
Correct.
And you
We
think
never
that,
hear about them, do we?
No,
not
There's a
often.
message there.
yeah, there is.
So they are on a very proactive system. To get the water to the proactive system, you would have to, one, do the study to know where your weak spots are, so that we can get those fixed by a third party. To put more work on the current team and still having to repair everything else that's, you know, kind of coming down, it wouldn't be fruitful for the city.
Are you ready to hear from the public who's here? And
Yes.
also I want to give a shout out at almost every single meeting. Our new building services director is here. Thank you for being here. Thank you. That's Rob.
Is there anyone from the public, if you want to step up to the podium so everyone?
That's
can
why
hear
it's
you.
recorded. You know the routine, guy. We got
I
it for the
do,
Zoom. Come on.
I have several questions, so I'm willing to go last.
Yeah, and just say who you are and
Anyone else want
what
to
you're
go? Thank you.
Oh, no, we're still having the budget workshops. Go ahead and sign in. Yeah, there you go.
Thank you. My name is Guy Fielder. I'm Ward 5, Stevens Ward. Rick, I'm going to ask you to help me with one thing here, and it's been about a year. You, I think, presented a finding, and I don't remember if it was for a month or for a quarter, where we put 25 million gallons of water into the water system and we only billed for 20, which meant that we had 5 million gallons unaccounted for. Do you remember that?
So when I first came on council, and Megan and I had a discussion back and forth. At the time I was at council before, so this was 3 years ago, with capacity for 3.7 million gallons of water a day. And I asked the question, and Megan pulled up data to ask, how much water did we pull out? How much did we bill for?
Okay, that's
And so that was the representation that we talked about. Megan's been working that, and I don't know, in terms of how much we got out and how much gets lost in the system. And as I recall, there was also part of the discussion, there's definitely line loss. But if we're, as a city, we're using roughly 1.5 million, 2 million gallons a day, that's where we were. Just multiply that out, it says as a city, we're gonna be doing roughly, 60 million gallons of water.
And that's billed usage.
That would be billed use.
Okay. All right. So are we still following up on a delta between what we're putting into the system and what we're billing? Do we know roughly what we're losing?
So we're trying to work back so we have water loss from the fire department.
Mm.
Because that's not actually metered and calculated. So when they do their training or when they actually have to respond to something, we're trying to figure out the formula specifically to get an estimate. All of our water leaks, it's knowing ideally what we're losing the water. So the one where we lost pretty much the full capacity of the storage tank on the west side, that's a huge loss.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
so,
you're
yeah.
talking hundreds of thousands of gallons. So we're working back and we've got an internal log trying to pinpoint all the leaks we can recognize and then estimate where those losses are.
Okay.
And then we also have things like splash day.
And that would be a water loss.
Yeah, because
So, and again, I'm a simple-minded engineer. If everybody here is concerned about conserving water, but we appear to be losing, if not tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of gallons every month. Has anyone thought about doing an ROI and figure out what we could actually save in water if we go ahead with repairing? And then a lead-on question to that.
wait, Mr. Fielder, No acronyms. What is ROI for everybody?
Return on investment.
Okay, there you go.
So how much did we spend on these gosh darn repairs last year? And do we have at least that much in the budget as a line item for upcoming repairs? Because the system's a year older than it was last year. And it seems pretty logical that we're going to at least spend as much as we spent last year, if not more. And I know I hear people, especially Megan, God bless you.
Yeah.
We take from Peter to pay Paul, and Peter doesn't have a whole lot to give. So it'd be nice if we knew if we were budgeting for these gosh darn leaks. Is there such a line item?
So we do have specific line items for line replacement. What we have is system distribution, which would be pretty much all the repairs. It's kind of a catch-all. The line replacement is a little bit harder to manage because they're too busy. They can't go in and fix sections at a time because they're too busy trying to fix all of the leaks and sewer backups that are happening at the same time. So that's where the council, I'd like to have that study done with, okay, we bring in that third party and they're gonna come in and they're gonna replace, 100 miles. I know we don't have that many, but of line.
You
Well,
might
we
be
don't-
surprised.
Right? We go in and we designate, these are all the blocks we're gonna replace. At the same time, though, we have to work back with our street department and our gas utility, because when we start pulling up those roads, if it's in a road, then we want to make sure that the street also gets repaired in conjunction with it. You'll notice that a lot of city blocks have street cuts on them because one, we've had a new tap put in and it's got to go across the road. So the road was cut for that new line, or we've dug it up for a water leak, or we had a gas repair that needed to be done because they are required to, replace lines as well. So really it's, yes, it can be done, but we need to make sure we have a plan where everyone works together to get it done and we have the staffing capability to do it.
Okay, thank you. So,
So we don't use that line item very often.
all right. We have lost several properties in the property taxes on several properties. Rick, again, you're probably most familiar with what's going on at Sul Ross. They did buy the old building, West Texas Bank building.
Trans-Pecos.
Trans-Pecos, thank you. And then they also bought Porter's and they're moving Mr. Ward's Garden Center somewhere else. So we're losing that tax revenue. We've lost the tax revenue on the building that burned. Do you have a rough estimate of how much tax revenue that's going to impact our budget?
Not with Sul Ross's purchases, even though the property has on Holland's burned down, we still will collect some because it's privately. We'll still collect some property.
The lot value.
Sales.
We don't have the sales tax.
Mhm.
But as far as the Sul Ross, I don't know what the impact will be yet.
Okay,
I could
All
say
right.
it's around 12,000, I think, 12 to 13,000 a year.
okay.
I remember
What's-
I remember on the Central Appraisal District. Brewster County.
That
Central
doesn't account
Appraisal.
for exemptions if there were exemptions or anything.
The flip side of that is student enrollment is up. So I'd expect we'll blow past $12,000 in lost property tax by sales tax.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
All right. I'm old and I'm having a senior moment. I had one more question, but I can't remember what it is. So I think I'll surrender the mic.
Is there anyone else in the public that would like to speak on the water?
Why not? Just state your name and ward.
I am Martha Munoz. I'm out of Ward 4. Family's been here for centuries. So, I'm an educator and I've lived in a lot of different places. My suggestion to the council is, if you're going to do a conservative plan, get you a group of people that volunteer to be on the program and make recommendations. One of the things that I have seen that I do know about firsthand is the smart meters, and Van Horn has them. They've had them for years. Okay. The man that invented that is a Van Horn High School graduate. So if you could reach out to him, I think he could tell you what the latest updates are. Okay. He's got family here in Alpine.
Do you
He
know
built-
his name?
Travis Sparks. He is a brother to Trava Baker and Kendra down at Porter's. He's her uncle, so he can help you with the latest, okay, on that. On the availability of water. This is what I want you to do. Y'all keep saying repair and replace. I know there's some pipes in the city that need to be totally moved. Okay, they're under structures. Okay, the main line goes along the railroad. I think that there's buildings on top of it. I don't know for sure, but when you talk to your engineers, have them look at the whole plan, the whole thing of what's in place, and then make recommendations. When it comes to the taps, I think that if there's a cost with the taps, that the person that's asking for the taps also needs to pay for the pavement repairs. I don't think that's something that I need to pay for when my neighbor needs a tap. So
We do have additional costs for road fees. So when the road is cut, they do have to pay an additional fee.
good, that's good. I had a misconception on that. So my suggestion to y'all is I look forward to having a new council. I think y'all are going to be very progressive and stuff, but don't forget that your citizens have their ideas too, because in my neighborhood, I know what's going on. And I am down there. Lechuguilla is where I rode my horses. That was where I rode my horses. I can tell you which way the water runs. I can tell you what animals lived out there. I can tell you everything. And yeah, your people in each group in the city, they know what's going on. They know what's going on in their neighborhood. And I think y'all need to open up the door for people to have input on a smaller scale to make some recommendations while you're doing your engineering and stuff like that. So I'm done.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak on the water?
And Guy Fielder, Ward 5. So you were talking about, I don't remember the division, but where you have put in a lot of stub outs for future development. And some of those stub outs is where some of the leaks are. You were going to kill those stub outs.
We only have one that I'm aware of, and that's been cut.
It's so you've killed it. I was going to ask if instead of killing it, could you put in a valve? Because planning for future development is a good thing. Killing it means you got to go back. If you put in a valve, then you can turn it off and on when you need
We'll
it.
have to replace the whole line because it's what I call it.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Where are we at with our generators on our pumps? Do we have generators on all the pumps?
We
Okay,
do
so
not. We do have mobile generators that we can put on a trailer
Uh-huh,
to take out where we need to when time comes.
uh-huh,
We are still in the running for the FEMA grant that we applied for 2 years ago.
okay. Any idea when we might hear? Okay, so that was one of the things I kind of skipped over, generators at the pumps. Okay.
I have one more
I-
question.
I just want to remind everybody that it is 4:48. We're gonna stop at 5 so we can
We
prepare for
can stop
council.
after the one.
One question I was gonna have is, when we talk about all these big projects, and I know that you're juggling, 20 other things, we got 39 priorities or whatever else. Legitimately, where do you see us in a year?
In a year,
If you
I
get
see us securing the funding, having the engineer reports to move forward, and then starting to procure outside vendors to accomplish the projects.
RFPs?
Yes.
Which are requests for proposals.
So it will take a year really to outline exactly what we want to go out for funding for, and then make sure we go out the correct direction. We will have to have a financial advisor and bond counsel.
So this is a year of planning, setting the priorities and planning.
And making sure we have, like I said, the engineer studies to back what we.
What would it take to accelerate that? The reason I asked Megan was worried about water pressure, to let you hear.
So the Lechuguilla we could move forward with now. The engineers did come in and do a report to council, and I can have them come back. in,
Yes.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
To refresh everyone's minds.
And we have new members that did.
It's really just, I mean, when you're looking at the fees, you're gonna have to consider how to.
That's why I educate us so we can figure out.
And would that project be a different bond counsel, financial advisor, everything else for each of these? Because we're talking about the other ones tonight.
So if we go out for one complete funding, it would just be one. You don't have to do it per project. You can do it for a whole group.
Okay, Martha Munoz, Ward 4,
Thank you.
I'm over there. The Moss Well up there on A Mountain's gone through different ownerships. I'm gonna tell you what I think. I think if y'all need to put a tank up there where John's doing all of his grading and stuff and fill it up, you'll have water pressure. Just my idea, because the tanks over here on this side of the mountain provide plenty of pressure. All you have to do is put a tank on that side. I don't want to look at a tank, but if it helps, you know, it is what it is. So y'all might want to consider that. There's also some property over there off of Harrison and East Avenue K that the last time I checked with what was his name? David Hale, there was no ownership of a little triangle of land over there. And it's a good place to put a tank on the ground. It's on the southeast corner of South Harrison and East Avenue K. It's a little triangle there. It's last I looked at, nobody owned it. Okay, David Hale confirmed that nobody owned it. You could put a tank there. I don't want to look at a tank,
But you will.
but those are my people.
Yeah, yeah.
That's my neighborhood, you know, if you're gonna put those people over there, they need the water. And I think there's some quicker fixes than y'all are realizing. So I'm done.
Thank you.
Something big, somebody's gonna paint their wall.
Yeah, we could.
You actually.
Native mural. If the city owned it. I'm sure.
Martha, you have great ideas. How come you run for council?
So TCEQ had to approve the coconut.
When they found out.
Okay.
I have one more comment real quick, if I might, Megan. I think all of these plans sound fantastic, and I do appreciate your ideas of bringing up, you know, some quicker fixes, and I hope we can consider those as well. I think something that's also interesting here is a public awareness or public engagement campaign as well, like selling these ideas, because some of this is going to, whether it raises taxes or creates a bond or other things. And, you know, some of us might not be running again, or we have a lame duck up here, you know, and so those types of things, not to, I love you as mayor, but at the same time, we want to make sure if we do all this work, or if Megan does all of this work, that the council, the next council or the next mayor is going to be able to take this on. And so we want to make sure that the community is part of it, but also understands such a long-term process to this.
That's why I said education, for not just
Absolutely.
us, but for the community.
I agree with
That's what
you
I'm talking about.
completely. Thank you. Yeah. And so I just want to make sure that there is some ways to be able to do exactly that. Thank you, Mayor.
I would like to mention something on the educational. We have so many people that still don't understand English. So if it's anything to translate or explain in Spanish about what we're going on, I would be glad
Thank you.
to help on that with letters or small hometowns. Just for the specific topics that we're talking, if they have any questions, so they can get informed too.
I think that's perfect. Thank you.
If there's no more comments, then we can adjourn.
Okay, and with that, we'll adjourn. We have a meeting at 5:30. If anybody's here to make a public comment, be sure to grab the public comment card over there. Make sure you write which agenda item. The agenda should be over there as well, that you'll be speaking on. And then there's a little box. Gio, can you point to it? Right here, right next to Councilmember Stevens and in front of Gio's desk for you to put your comment card into. And we will resume at 5:30. Did I finish?